Hello there, how are you tonight? If you're feeling drowsy, gently wrapped in the warmth of your blanket and wondering what it might be like to wake up in feudal Japan, well, let me assure you it would have been deeply disappointing. Your pillow would be made of wood, your breakfast would taste like regret, and your social status somewhere between servant and invisible. But don't worry tonight, you won't be dodging samurai glances or washing rice for hours. You're here to drift into slumber with a tale of ancient bureaucracy, painfully polite, bowing, an armor that chafes in ways poetry can't express. So dim the lanterns, sip that sleepy time tea, and let's tiptoe into a world where even the ninjas are bored. Welcome to Why You Wouldn't Last a Day in Feudal Japan, the bedtime story with absolutely no action scenes, just enough historical accuracy and a whole lot of yawns. The first thing you notice is that your pillow is filled with grain husks, not soft, not scented, just crunchy. You're lying on a rice straw, Matt called it, which seems deceptively comfortable until your back you that it is, not memory form it. A memory of feudal suffering. Outside, dawn barely scratches the sky. A rooster, which isn't even yours, screams at the exact moment your neighbor begins coughing his way through his morning ritual. No toothbrush, just rinsing and spitting somewhere near the vegetable patch. You're in Edo Modern Day, Tokyo in the Tokugawa period, and you're not exactly crushing it. You belong to the Ashigaru class, low-level foot soldiers who basically serve as expendable background extras in samurai drama. You don't wear armor unless it's passed down or borrowed, and even then, it might be missing a critical part like a chest plate or dignity. Your room, about the size of a storage closet, partitioned with thin wooden panels and shoshi paper screens. Privacy is theoretical. There's no plumbing. There's a wooden bucket outside, and you're not entirely sure if it's for bathing, waste, or fermenting pickles. Probably all three. Breakfast is waiting. By waiting, I mean you have to prepare it. It's mostly military, cold, and crunchy in a way that makes you question whether flavor was banned by the shogun himself. If you're lucky, there's pickled radish, which is less of a treat and more of an acidic wake-up slap. Outside, the street buzzes with merchants shouting things you don't understand because they're from a neighboring province and your dialect differs by about 200 years of nuance. Samurai pass by, solemn and stern, and you must bow deeply without making eye contact. If you bow too low, you look foolish. Too high, you're disrespectful. Too slow, and you might be accused of You wipe the sleep from your eyes, reach for your worn sandals, and brace yourself for a day of repetitive drills, endless etiquette, and quiet existential dread. Only 17 hours to go before you do it all again. Mostly millet. Welcome to the least exciting part of your day, the morning meal that dreams forgot. After the emotional journey of waking up on a straw mat next to your own existential despair, you shuffle toward the low wooden table. It doesn't have legs, because chairs weren't really a thing for common folk. You sit cross-legged, knees already whispering silent protests, and stare at the food awaiting you. A bowl of cold millet, a few pickled vegetables, and ... Is that a fish? No. Just a fishy-shaped memory. Millet, in all its bland glory, was the breakfast of the masseuse. It's a grain with the charisma of wet cardboard and the texture of pencil shavings. There's no sugar, no milk, just crunch and silence. You sip miso soup. It's warm, but salty enough to make you question whether hydration is just a rumor. Occasionally, wealthy samurai might enjoy fresh rice, grilled fish, or something resembling flavor. But you get the leftovers of someone's leftovers. You chew slowly, not for savoring, but because there's a nail poking through the chopstick you carved last week. Conversation at breakfast, not encouraged. Speaking before superiors or even elders is a dangerous game. Instead, your household sits in hushed silence, punctuated only by the occasional cough and the rhythmic scraping of chopsticks against clay bowls. A cat wanders by. It does not acknowledge you. You bow, not out of respect for tradition but because the millet has reminded you of your fragile mortality. And just as you finish, your commander's assistant barges in, informing you that weapons training begins in 15 minutes. The mood darkens. You rise slowly, stomach not full, soul slightly emptier, ready for a day filled with formal greetings, strenuous drills, and the kind of repetitive chanting that numbs the spirit. The training yard is already half lit by a sluggish sun, and the sound of sandals slapping dirt becomes the morning's unofficial soundtrack. You've reported for duty, your bamboo spear in hand, your enthusiasm somewhere back in Chapter 1. The day's schedule, repetition, followed by more repetition. Your commander reads from a scroll the detailed battle formations you'll never get to use, because actual combat is rare and your job mainly consists of looking ready. You stand for hours in perfect stillness. Why? Because posture was discipline, and discipline was reputation. Even blinking too fast might be seen as weakness. A higher-ranking samurai strolls by and offers no greeting, just a dismissive glance that says, "You exist, unfortunately." Lunch approaches like an apologetic whisper. You get more millet. It's still cold. Afternoon drills begin. You practice walking silently in formation, a test not of skill, but of patience. Your feet ache. Your soul craves a nap. Someone sneezes out of turn and receives a stern lecture about disrupting martial harmony. A messenger delivers parchment news from the capital. It's not for you. You don't read anyway. That skill's reserved for the scholarly caste, who currently sit under a pine tree composing haiku about rocks. You visit the blacksmith, whose job is to tell you that your weapon is fine, while secretly wishing he were a fisherman instead. You nod solemnly. Everyone's pretending. By evening, the air thickens with the aroma of charcoal fires and quiet existential dread. You return home dusty, hungry, and entirely unchanged. You've gained no wisdom, no reward, just a modest blister and a powerful desire to sleep through the next century. You lie back on your straw mat, stare at the ceiling beams, and think, maybe tomorrow the millet will be warmer. As the morning fog lifts over the dojo courtyard, your master enters with the quiet menace of a man who hasn't laughed in 42 years. His eyebrows, sharp enough to slice bamboo, do not move. His lips remain sealed in a line so stern it could be used for calligraphy. Smiling in feudal Japan wasn't just rare, it was borderline threatening. The samurai class believed in dignity, honor, and a complete absence of visible joy. If you dared to flash teeth, someone might assume you're mocking the Bushido code, or worse, implying you have something to be happy about. You don't. Training begins. You bow at a precise 32 angle. Anything less, disrespectful. Anything more, begging for forgiveness. Your instructor demonstrates a sword form called the wave-cutting falcon without emotion. It looks elegant. You nod, forgetting for a moment that nodding is reserved for people who are allowed to make decisions. You are not one of them. At lunch, you sit near a junior samurai who seems slightly cheerful. This is alarming. You glance around nervously, waiting for an elder to descend upon him like a judgmental crane. Fortunately, his rice was slightly moldy. His smile fades. You visit the local artisan to pick up your repaired sandals. He bows. You bow. You pay in silence. No one thanks anyone. Gratitude is implied through mutual stoicism and shared suffering. As the day closes, a local storyteller performs an epic of honor and sacrifice. No one claps. The audience simply nods once, simultaneously, like coordinated melancholy. Back at home, your reflection in the water basin reveals a face so blank it could be mistaken for a tofu sculpture. You crawl onto your mat, rehearse tomorrow's neutral facial expression, and whisper the national motto of emotional suppression: "May my mouth remain horizontal." You've survived a day of silent misery and cold millet. Congratulations. But before collapsing onto your straw mat again, you must participate in one of feudal Japan's most puzzling evening rituals: shared bathing. You enter the local sento, a wooden structure where steam hovers like gossip. The rules here are simple, but crucial. Rinse before entering, avoid eye contact, and absolutely do not splash. Splashing is offensive. It implies excitement, and excitement is deeply discouraged. You scrub yourself with a rag that's thinner than your patience. Soap is rare, so the cleansing process mostly relies on warm water and wishful thinking. Once you're deemed sufficiently rinsed, you'll lower yourself into the tub, which is already occupied by multiple strangers. The water is murky, warm, yes, clean, debatable. Everyone sits, shoulder to shoulder, knees drawn up, like solemn dumplings simmering in cultural broth. No talking, no stretching, just soaking in silence while pretending not to notice the old merchant beside you slowly drifting into sleep. The bath water is reused, not just within the hour but sometimes throughout the entire evening. It's a community experience. which means if someone has foot problems, you now have foot problems. You try to relax, but your brain whispers questions like, whose leg just touched mine? Is that an eel? Do I now understand the concept of shared suffering on a spiritual level? After 15 motionless minutes, you rise slowly, bow to the room, and exit with skin mildly cleaner but soul questionably stained. You return home slightly steamed, emotionally drained, and grateful for the privacy of your empty futon. And as you drift off, you wonder, is this how tea feels when it steeps too long? You wake up, wondering if just maybe you'll improve your standing today. Perhaps own a patch of earth to grow your own dreams, or at least cucumbers. But alas, land ownership in feudal Japan is not for the likes of you. The hierarchy is clear and rigid. At the top, the shogun, ruler of all military matters. Below him, daimyo lords who control fiefs like kids hoarding marbles. Then comes the samurai class, who might be allowed a garden if they promise not to smile at it. You're an Ashigaro foot soldier, landless, hopeful. Your title grants you access to grass, not ownership, just proximity. The concept of private property wasn't even a common thing. Land belonged to the daimyo or the shogun and was handed out like heavily conditional party favors. Farmers worked the fields, but they didn't own them. Villagers built homes, but the land was someone else's legacy. Even the house you sleep in might technically belong to a cousin of a samurai who once complimented the governor's poetry. You ask your local elder, how can I earn land? He chuckles not because it's funny, but because it's tragically common. Live 100 years, win a war, marry into power, and even then rent. Meanwhile, taxes are collected on your income and your hopes. Rice is currency, wealth is weight, and your measly possessions are chipped bowl. A sandal with personality are not enough to buy even half a pond. You sweep the dirt outside your rented hut. It's not your dirt. You plant turnips. They're not your turnips. You build a fence. It's decorative, because boundaries are metaphysical. And so, as the sun sets over land you'll never claim, you return home to your futon also, possibly borrowed, and whisper into the paper-thin wall, I don't own anything, except my growing sense of humility. It's morning again in feudal Japan. You're freshly steamed from last night's communal bath, wrapped in your faded robe, and ready to navigate a social minefield of bows, glances, and deeply confusing honor. You step outside and greet your neighbor, a tofu merchant with a permanent frown. You bow at a safe angle roughly 30 degrees and whisper, Ohayo, being careful not to sound too cheerful, because here, joy is suspicious and excessive friendliness borders on delusional. Your commander approaches. Your bow lower. Not too low he might think you're mocking him. Not too fast he could interpret that as insincerity. You wait for him to initiate conversation. He doesn't. This is normal. Later, during a temple visit, you witness a minor social tragedy. A rice farmer bows incorrectly to a visiting samurai. He bowed before the samurai was fully in view. The result, a public shaming. No rice this week. His bow was aggressively anticipatory. A phrase whispered like it carries plague. You learn that words like thank you, sorry, and may I must be deployed with precision. Use the wrong suffix or forget an honorific, and someone might accidentally assign you latrine duty for the next 6 lunar cycles. Better to say nothing. Nothing rarely offends. Even how you sit matters. Cross-legged, near a superior, disrespectful, kneeling with the wrong foot forward, practically treasonous. Eating before your elders do might trigger a 12-hour lecture about the virtue of restraint. Politeness here is not about kindness. It's a delicate dance performed on the edge of a bamboo sword. And as you drift off to sleep, one hand on your futon and one eye slightly open in paranoia, you whisper, tomorrow I'll try bowing slightly slower. Maybe they won't notice I exist. You're halfway through your millet lunch when a shadow crosses your doorway. It's not the weather turning, it's something far worse. The tax collector. His presence is marked not by fanfare, but by the quiet dread of shuffled parchment and scribbled judgment. He wears robes the color of faded ink and carries an abacus that looks like it has seen too many dreams crushed beneath it. He doesn't smile. No one has ever seen him smile. Rumors say he once chuckled when someone miscalculated their rice tribute and accidentally handed over fermented soybeans. He steps into your home, uninvited. That's allowed, because technically, your home isn't yours, it's the governor's. Everything is the governor's. Your millet bowl, your sandals, even the one-eyed cat that hates you. He sits without asking and begins listing things you owe. 30 handfuls of rice. You only have 20. 1 goat. You don't even know what a goat is. 5 roof tiles. He says yours are substandard. You try to protest, politely, very politely, but he pauses to explain that protest is taxed. That's emotional resistance fee. Number 34B. You bow, and he nods, indicating he's generously waiving it this once. He then inspects your home's dimensions. It's smaller than allowed, which is also taxed. You make a note to live slightly diagonally next month. By the time he leaves, you've given away half your food, your best broom, and your family's ceremonial Justinka sandal. He tells you he'll be back next full moon with more complicated forms. You exhale, staring at the empty rice jar, and whisper into the wind, "I'll pay next time," with hopes and a mildly valuable potato. Congratulations, you live indoors. But before you feel too proud, remember your home is less shelter and more decorative suggestion, constructed primarily from wood, bamboo, and shejji. Your house is a tribute to minimalism and maximal vulnerability. The roof creaks like it's writing its own tragic haiku. The floor is so cold it might be trying to communicate with your bones. Privacy, a luxury reserved for castles and ghosts. You try to hang a scroll for decoration. It curls in protest. A breeze passes through the walnut under it, through it reminding you that feudal Japan invented both elegance and structural fragility. Your neighbor sneezes. You'll say bless you, even though he's 3 homes away. That's how thin the walls are. In winter, you add straw mats. In summer, you remove them. In between, you stare at them, wondering how such simple materials could absorb so much existential fatigue. Your door doesn't lock, it just slides. Anyone determined enough could just slide it open. You once caught a wandering dog sleeping in your tatami room. You didn't wake him. He looked more at peace than you'll ever be. The ceiling features a beam so low you've named it Ouch-san. You've bowed to it unintentionally every day for a year. Occasionally, termites visit to check on the real estate. You don't stop them. They might pay taxes. And so, under this humble roof that flutters with every sigh of wind, you lie down beside your paper wall, whispering, "My house is delicate, but at least it understands me." This morning, you're not sharpening weapons. You're not bowing at mathematically precise angles. You're not even eating. Today's assignment is subtler and significantly less glamorous. Crafting serenity out of geology. Your lord has requested a perfectly composed Karazansua Zen dry landscape garden. You must rake gravel into flowing patterns, place rocks like ancient punctuation, and somehow evoke the essence of distant mountains using 3 sad lumps of granite. You begin by hauling stones each, one heavier than your self-worth across the courtyard. They must be placed but not to ace. The goal is natural chaos contained within spiritual order, which sounds suspiciously like every dinner conversation you've ever avoided. There's no guidebook. Your reference is the local monk's dream from 2 summers ago, in which the perfect garden looked like a crane landing beside a whisper. You try to recreate this, but your crane keeps looking like a confused potato. Raking begins. You carve sweeping lines into white pebbles, like ripples in water, but one sneeze from a nearby scholar sends dust flying. You begin again and again. A noble passes by. He pauses, nods once, then murmurs, "Too aggressive." He's talking about the gravel's emotional tone. You bow and tone down your artistic turbulence. 3 hours later, you've moved the same rock 7 times. Each time, it's slightly off. You now believe the rock has a personal vendetta against your creative spirit. By sunset, the garden looks serene, peaceful, like it was arranged by someone emotionally defeated enough to truly understand silence. You lie on your tatami mat, hands sore, spirit raked, whispering, "Tomorrow I rake the ripples of my regret." You've been summoned to attend a tea ceremony, not a casual gathering, but a solemn ballet of leaf and etiquette, where sipping is sacred and blinking must be scheduled. The host greets you at the gate with a bow so precise it's measured in centimeters. You will respond with your best approximation, hoping your eyebrows didn't move too disrespectfully. You remove your sandals, but place them just so, angled toward enlightenment and away from social disgrace. Step 1. Enter the tea room. Step 2. Admire the hanging scroll. Step 3. Gaze silently at the flower arrangement without making any assumptions about the chrysanthemums. Step 4. Forget what year it is. You kneel on your shins. Posture is critical. You're now in Seiza, The traditional sitting position invented two humble hips and test blood circulation. The tea-ware is introduced like royalty. First, the bowl, then the whisk, then the bamboo scoop, which holds exactly the right amount of matcha powder, not too grassy, not too disrespectfully bold. The tools are cleaned twice, using movements choreographed to match the host's breathing cycle. Hot water is added, slowly, reverently, with a ladle that looks like it was blessed by 3 monks and a tranquil goose. The tea is whisked into a frothy green cloud like a mossy dream floating in a bowl of obligation. The host rotates at 180 degrees, presenting it with hands that whisper, "Please don't spill this." You receive the bowl, turn it counterclockwise, then sip, but not a big sip. Just enough to acknowledge the leaf's journey through time, agriculture, and existential philosophy. Yuseo Zucchini, meaning, excuse me for sipping before you, even if you're the last one sipping. The taste is earthy, grassy, poetic, slightly reminiscent of Chapter 2's cold millet. The bowl bows spiritually. You leave, transformed not by flavor, but by the patience required to survive an ancient ritual where sipping is transcendence. As you crawl onto your futon that night, legs asleep and soul slightly steeped, you whisper, "I drank a metaphor, and my knees will never forgive me." Tonight, your Lord has graciously invited you to experience an important cultural event, which, in feudal terms, means no escape and mandatory clapping at the end. You arrive at the open-air theater, guided by the scent of roasted chestnuts and the occasional existential sigh. The stage is ornate, decorated with shimmering curtains, hand-painted backdrops, and precisely 0 exits for the soul. The actors appear in bold costumes so elaborate they require assistance just to walk. One performer's outfit is so heavy, historians will later classify it as wearable architecture. The performance begins with a slow strum of a shamisen, followed by the actor's entrance on a rotating platform very slowly. He stares into the distance. You stare at him. Nothing happens for 6 full minutes. He finally speaks. It's one word. The crowd gasps. You blink. Kabuki dialogue is delivered in a stylized chant that stretches syllables like taffy. One sentence lasts longer than some marriages. And the plot, something about a forbidden love, an angry monk, and a misplaced scroll. Or maybe it's about rice. It's unclear. Scene changes are done manually. Men dressed in black crawl across the stage, moving props like shadowy regrets. At one point, a flower petal falls, dramatically, and everyone stares at it like a just-proposed marriage. Act 2 begins. You realize only Act 1 has ended. A character reappears dressed as a ghost. His makeup glows in the moonlight, and his speech sounds like a poetic wind being filtered through slow molasses. You begin to question your grip on time. By Act 3, half the audience is deeply meditating, or napping, or both. The villain performs a dance so slow, a nearby bird finishes migrating before he completes his pirouette. Finally, the hero triumphs. Probably, he bows for 7 straight minutes. The play ends. You clap. Not because you're moved, but because the pain of silence is greater. You walk home gently humming the refrain, unsure whether it was a love story, a ghost tale, or an elaborate way to teach patience. As you collapse onto your futon and cradle your still ringing ears, you whisper, "Art is beautiful, and also very, very long." You've barely recovered from the kabuki ordeal when your lord insists you attend tonight a spiritual literary gathering at the temple with a monk named Shoshi. Shoshi once meditated so deeply he forgot his own name for 2 years. Now he writes poetry about leaves and feelings, and occasionally about very sad frogs. You arrive at the temple, where incense curls through the air like contemplative snakes. Everyone is seated on woven mats. A gong sounds faintly in the distance, or maybe someone's stomach. Either way, the mood is set. Shoshi appears, his robes rustling like philosophical paper. He nods slowly. Time is folding inwards. He begins, bamboo sighs gently in the rains. Quiet embrace, I remember rice. The crowd exhales in awe. Someone weeps. A butterfly lands on the scroll, bows, then disappears. One samurai tries to read a haiku but chokes on the word moonlight. He is consoled with herbal tea and a metaphor. There is a segment called free verse, which in this world means no rules and maximum confusion. Someone recites a poem in which a crane marries a pine tree. Shoshi smiles. It's unclear whether he approves or is just amused by metaphysical weddings. You're handed the poetry brush. Everyone watches. You panic. You're right. I miss miso soup. It touched my soul yesterday. Today, I am cold. Shushi gasps. A cricket applauds. You are now a poet. The night ends with communal silence so profound that even memories stop making noise. Shoshi bows. The moon nods. You return home carrying not a scroll, but something heavier. Existential depth. Your lord believes every samurai should be skilled in the art of remote poking. And so, beneath the moon's skeptical gaze, you're sent to train with Lady Tetsuya, a retired assassin who now teaches archery to sleep-deprived warriors and emotionally wounded squirrels. She greets you at the training ground, one eye patched, the other full of weary judgment. Her bow is taller than most moral compasses, and her quiver hums ominously, as if the arrows remember things. Lesson 1 is posture. You must stand like a heron deciding whether to commit to flight. Lesson 2 is silence. You're told not to speak unless the arrow asks you to. It never does. Lady Tetsuya demonstrates by releasing a shot so quiet and fast it splits a falling leaf. She nods. You try to imitate her. Your arrow flops dramatically into the dirt. A nearby frog croaks in pity. She watches. She doesn't speak. Her silence becomes louder than judgment. Hours pass. You practice breathing. Slow, deliberate, like you're trying not to offend the wind. You draw the bow. Your fingers tremble. Lady Tetsuya raises a brow, almost That alone makes 3 cherry blossoms fall. Finally, your arrow flies. It hits the target. Off-center, but still. She nods again, the most praise she's given anyone since the eclipse of 1129. She tells you, every arrow is a thought, released. Aim wisely. You cry internally. The moon approves. You walk home, quiver empty but heart full. Archery, it turns out, isn't just about hitting things. It's about not missing the point. Spring has unfurled its blush across the land, and with it comes one of the most elegant, passive-aggressively deadly events of the year, the cherry blossom duel. Legend says this duel began when 2 poets fell in love with the same tree. Since then, warriors meet beneath blooming sakura to determine dominance, not through swordplay, but through their ability to summon the most dramatic flurry of petals. You arrive at dawn, the grove trembling with anticipation and an unreasonable amount of pollen. Your opponent, Riko of the Whisper Blade. She once defeated 5 men using only size and rhythmically timed blinks. Rules are simple. No weapons, no shouting. Victory awarded to the one whose movements cause the highest petal count in 60 seconds. A monk officiates using an abacus and interpretive dance. Round 1 begins. Riko performs a twill so graceful, birds pause mid-flight. Her sleeve creates a vortex. Petals rise like bashful stars. The crowd gasps in 17-part harmony. You breathe deeply. You move with purpose. Your footwork mimics ancient calligraphy. The petals respond. One lands dramatically on your nose, another on a bystander's teacup. Riko squints. You bow. So does the cherry tree. Suddenly, wind stirs. Nature joins the duel. Riko leaps. Petals swirl like shy ghosts at a masquerade. Then you leap. You spin with the practiced elegance of someone who's watched way too many koi fish. The air blossoms. Petals erupt like gentle confetti from the heavens. The monk faints from the spectacle. After a long pause, the abacus is consulted. Petal count. Tied. Resolution. A shared cup of plum wine and eternal mutual respect. The crowd claps in high. That night, you return home, brushing pink from your hair. You whisper, "We fought, not to wound, but to bloom." It begins with a letter that wasn't there yesterday, tucked beneath your futon, smelling faintly of chrysanthemum and causality. You are summoned to a tea ceremony hosted by a ronin named Hoshinaga, who reportedly appears only during full moons in historical inaccuracies. The venue, a remote tea house that seems ordinary, until you notice that the calendar shifts with every blink. You enter. The air feels like it's been curated by philosophers. Hoshinaga sits cross-legged, wearing armor from 3 eras, and sipping tea brewed in a kettle, whispering in Latin. He gestures silently. You sit. Time does not. The tea ceremony follows traditional steps. Mostly, bow to the host, cleanse the bowl, question your place in the universe, sip with dignity, even as reality flickers like bad candlelight. Hoshinaga pours tea with movements so precise, they ripple backwards. Hispy. This tea is from tomorrow. You must drink it slowly, or you'll catch up to your regrets. You nod, because arguing with time travelers tends to fracture Tuesdays. The tea tastes ancient and futuristic, like memories steeped in mystery. You feel oddly serene and slightly confused, which is exactly how enlightenment begins. As the ceremony ends, Hoshinaga vanishes mid-sip. The tea cools. You blink, and outside, cherry blossoms fall upwards. You return home unsure what just occurred. Your scroll is blank, but your mind feels full. You'll receive a folded note from your lord, sealed with ink and mystery. Meet at the grove. Speak only if you dare. That's not ominous at all. At twilight, you arrive. The bamboo sways gently, creaking like gossiping elders. Your opponent stands beneath the tallest stalk, clad in muted robes and holding a scroll, not to read, but to intimidate with literary weight. This is the Whisper Duel. Rules are sacred. No shouting, no victory awarded to the whisper that causes the most bamboo leaves to flutter. Round 1 begins. Your rival leans forward and murmurs. The moon mourns the sun each morning. Several leaves rustle. One bird visibly sighs. Your turn. You whisper. Raindrops. Remember the names of mountains. A gust stirs. A nearby monk drops his teacup. Your opponent blinks. Slowly, respectfully. Round 2 escalates. Each whisper deeper, quieter, more poetic. Your opponent invokes cherry blossoms. You counter with a phrase so subtle the wind blushes. Silence is a bridge between souls. The bamboo responds with a low creak, the grove itself weighing in. A final whisper is exchanged. No words, just breath laced with meaning. The grove trembles. The duel ends. No winner, only mutual awe. You bow. Your rival bows. Even the bamboo bows slightly. You return home, carrying no prize but the echo of your own stillness. Your lord insists you partake in an ancient bonding ritual. You were hoping for sake and card games. Instead, you redispatch to spend a night inside the region's most haunted structure, the Tower of Reasonably Vexed Spirits. The pagoda rises like a stack of regrets, 8 elegant stories tall, each floor housing a different legend, a different echo, and apparently a different flavor of pickled vegetables. Floor 1. Welcome mat and mild anxiety. You and your fellow samurai gather, pretending not to fear wallpaper that hums. A scroll is passed around listing the rules. Do not snore aggressively. If a ghost offers you tea, politely decline. Turnips are sacred. Shoshi the monk arrives, with snacks and casual dread. Floor 2. The mirror of misjudgment. A single mirror greets you. Everyone must stare into it and reflect, emotionally and physically. One samurai sees his childhood dreams, another sees a duck. You see the time you mistook a ninja for a tree. Floor 3. Pickled turnip shrine. Here lies an altar with 108 jars. Shoshi explains that every jar holds a pickled turnip dedicated to unresolved regrets. One is labeled, "I said the wrong thing to a crane." You add your own, once challenged, a door to a duel. Floor 4. Ghost petting zoo. Not what it sounds like. Ethereal cats drift about, purring in binary. You pet one. Your hand feels nostalgia. A ghost dog wags at you, then disappears to chase conceptual sticks. Floor 5. Gossip scroll archive. The walls are lined with ancient scrolls filled with whispered drama. Lady Aiko borrowed rice and never returned it. Master Kenji talks to koi fish like they're his therapist. Someone replaced the Lord's ink with plum jam. You add your own. I secretly love miso more than duty. Floor 6. Meditation chairs. Shoshi encourages deep stillness. You meditate so hard your left foot falls asleep and time skips forward. Someone hums the sound of guilt. The pagoda sighs. Floor 7. Winds of ambiguity. Cool breezes bring forgotten thoughts. One gust delivers a haiku from someone who hasn't been born yet. You catch the scent of plum blossoms and possible futures. Floor 8. Moonlight chamber at last. The top. You gaze over the village, the stars, your own small place in the cosmic spreadsheet. Shoshi recites poetry. You munch a turnip with gravitas. Everyone nods, not to each other, but to existence itself. You descend at dawn, spiritually recalibrated and slightly salty. You whisper, haunted, maybe, but oddly delicious. It begins with your lord announcing, "You lack serenity. Go find it. preferably in patterns. He dispatches you to train under General Ish, a legendary warrior who once conquered entire provinces, but now rearranges pebbles and contemplates moss. His garden is immaculate. Each rock radiates intention. The sand glows with silent potential. Ishimaru greets you not with words, but with a single, graceful rake stroke, so perfect it echoes in your ribs. You bow. He nods. Lesson 1 begins. Technique. Rake like you mean it. You must draw paths. He growls, not trails of indecision. You attempt a spiral. It looks more like a confused snail. Ishimaru sighs and erases it with a breeze from his sleeve. Philosophy. Every rock has a story. He introduces you to the garden stones. The large one is general regret. The flat one is disappointment, but with style. The tiny one hiding in sand is that decision I don't talk about. You're told to place a stone that represents your spirit. You choose a slightly wobbly one. Ishimaru nods with melancholy respect. Serenity combat. Midway through the session, a rival samurai enters. He challenges you to a peaceful garden off. You each rake opposing halves, attempting to summon the most tranquility. Your lines shimmer with effort. His lines are too perfect. Suspiciously so. You add a rogue spiral. He retaliates with minimalist zigzags. Ishimaru watches, expression unreadable. Finally, a breeze flows through the garden. Your pattern ripples, subtly, emotionally. His remains static. Ishimaru declares you the winner for showing fragility, which is the truest strength. You bow. Your opponent bows. A nearby stone bows emotionally. As you leave, Ishimaru hands you a tiny rake. Use it in life, he says, especially during complicated conversations. You return home, spiritually aligned and covered in gravel. You whisper, tranquility is just strategy with flowers. Your journey ends where it began, with uncertainty, a blank scroll, and the faint scent of plum ink. Your lord sends you to meet Sensei, a legendary origami master known for crafting emotional clarity from square paper and heartbreak. His hut is silent, but for the flutter of folded cranes overhead, suspended in gentle chaos. He greets you with no words, just a sheet of paper and a nod that says, "It's time." The first fold. Doubt you fold. The edge of the paper inward, hesitating. Kuragami watches, expression unreadable. You recall every challenge, every cherry blossom duel, whisper battle, and haunted snack. The second fold. Memory. You shape wings. They remind you of monks, frogs, and emotionally complex turnips. Each crease carries weight. You feel your thoughts folding too. Tighter, sharper. The third fold. Letting go of the paper is almost a crane now. Kuragami adds one final touch. A flourish only visible in metaphor. You understand this is your journey. Flattened, folded, and set free. He gestures to the crane. It lifts into the air. Not by wind, but intention. You watch it rise until it's a dot against the sky. You bow. He bows. Even the paper bows. Spiritually. As you leave the hut, you whisper, "Became a warrior. I leave a story." The scroll closes. The ink dries. The tale is told. Thank you for wandering with me through petals and Whenever you feel the need to unfold again, I'll be right here. As the lanterns dim and the scroll closes for good, you stand at the edge of the tale. Not a warrior, not a poet, not a ghost whisperer, but all of them stitched together with cherry blossoms and whispered wisdom. You've dueled with silence, brewed tea with raked serenity into existence, and folded your story into paper flight. Each chapter a step, each moment a fold in the origami of identity. The stars above blink knowingly. The moon grins like it's been in on the joke this whole time. Even the pickled turnips seem oddly proud. So now, you turn off your thoughts like the last candle in a quiet pagoda. You let go of scrolls, swords, and strange poetry about frogs. You breathe in peace. You breathed out yesterday. And you whisper, softly, but with all your being, "Good night."